I think it's steps like 3 through 6 if you're looking at the handout. So we're gonna work on getting all this nice and smooth, which is easier now because it's stiffer. But like I said, if yours doesn't feel stiffer, then I'll show you the blow dryer and you'll blow dry it first, okay? So the first thing we're gonna do is we're going to use what's called a rib tool, RIB, to work out any like lumps and bumps. They come in this metal and the rubber one. Try them both out, see which ones you like better. To me personally, I like the metal rib tool. It's my favorite tool, okay? You can also first realize if you want to paddle a little more, like maybe you're like, ooh, this is really uneven, what was I thinking yesterday? So you can grab a paddle again and kind of like touch it up a little bit before you start working, okay? But a rib tool you use, you kind of hold it, put a little curve in it, and I always just go upwards because it's easier. And you're actually taking clay off because you're scraping all the lumps and bumps out. So after a couple passes, kind of wipe the clay off and then keep going. Like for these round areas, you can go this way. We're just scraping to even out all our clay. So if you left yourself a lot of lumps and bumps, then you're gonna have more work to do than others. And again, this is something that I make look easier and faster than it really is. But once you figure out the right pressure and the right way to hold this, it shouldn't take you that long. All right, so we're gonna make this nice and smooth. Yep. So we're starting to see it get much smoother. It looks much nicer than it did when we started. And then a common place people forget is this bottom. So after you think everything's perfect, always pick it up and look at the bottom and then drag it towards you so that's nice and smooth too. Okay, so right, that looks so much better, right? Head nod something. Okay. So after that, the tool does leave some tool marks, so you're just going to cruise your finger over your whole pot so that's nice and smooth. That gets rid of any little tool marks, any lumps. Helps you feel too if you do still have any big indentations that you can paddle out. Alright, so that looks nice. Okay, so when you think you got to this point, you're going to call me over so I can make sure, and then we're going to cut our lid, okay? So we can't just cut a lid straight, right? Because what would happen to our lid?
It would slide off.
It would just slide right off, right. So we have to make what's called a key in our lid. So we're just going to do a very simple key. You saw the two examples. One was like kind of zigzagged and one was just kind of wavy. If you're going to do zigzags, try to stay away from like a ton of zigzags because that makes it really hard for you. You could just do like maybe 4 big ones on each side. That's what I would recommend. So this is a fettling knife, all right? They're also in our tool bin. Everything's always in the tools. You want to make sure your knife is clean before you use it, so take it to the sink and rub a sponge on it so that there's no like clay crusties, all right? Because that'll mess up your cut, all right? So just decide where you kind of want your lid to be, not way up here and not way down there. So a nice, third of the way. Stick the knife in, and then you're just going to drag it. You're never going to pull it out until we're all the way done. So drag up, drag down. And then when you get closer to where you started, make sure you kind of slow down so you can match it up as perfectly as possible. All right, so now I can lift that lid off. All right, now that's really thick, right? What hides in thickness?
Bubbles.
Bubbles, okay. Bubbles are bad because they do what?
Explode.
Yes. Okay, so we're gonna thin this completely out now. This is the part where it's really important that your clay is not super soft. So if you are worried that your clay is super soft, ask me where the blow dryer is. I'll have you blow dry the inside so that it's not so weak. Because once this gets thin, it's gonna get wobbly. We don't want it wobbly, okay? So the first thing I like to do is draw how much I'm gonna carve away. So we like things to be nice and light in ceramics because we usually fill them with something. So we don't want them heavy with themselves already and then putting stuff in it. So I'm gonna do that to the lid, and I'm gonna also do that right away to the base. And this is just like a guide to help me think while I'm working. So the first thing I want you to do then, oh thank you, is I'm just gonna cheat with this base right away. I'm gonna hold the knife the other way, And I'm just gonna shave that off to take a big chunk of it off. You want to make sure you're supporting your pod while you do this so it doesn't get misshapen. Alright, so that's all I'm going to do on the base today. So then I'm going to work on just the lid. I'm going to hold it in my hand because again I don't want it to get all messed up. And I'm just going to start from where I made my mark and scoop stuff out.
So what's that called?
This is called a loop tool. Okay, so
That's easy.
real original. It looks like a loop, it's called a loop tool. And some of these loop tools you'll notice have like a bladed edge so they're sharp, and some of them are rounded, like a rounded wire. When your clay starts to get hard, you're not going to want to use that rounded wire one. You're going to want to use these sharp ones because it'll cut into your clay easier. These two you want to keep clean while you're working, otherwise it's going to mess up your pot. So I'm just going to hollow out the lid today to show you what you do after it's hollowed out. And then I'll have you guys sent on your way in a minute. So the other nice thing about holding it in your hand while you do this is you can feel if you're about to put a hole in your lid, okay? Putting a hole in there is going to kind of ruin your whole project. So keep it in your hand so you can always feel if you're getting too thin. Now I would say that this pot is probably too soft to be doing what I'm doing right now. Normally if I was working on this for a project, I would have blow dried this first. So many of you may need to come see me about blow drying. Alright, so now I'm just going to give it a feel, like make sure it's even all the way through. You want everything to be even so that it dries evenly. And I see I have a little thickness over here. A little bit over here. And now this feels pretty good. But that's pretty ugly on the inside, right? We're not going to leave it like that, so we got to clean it up. While it's still soft like this, you can get away with just doing it with your hand. So you can just kind of compress down a little bit. Do not mess with your edge, otherwise it won't match up anymore. So just get right on the side, don't touch where you cut. And get that nice and smooth. And every once in a while, kind of hold it back on, make sure it still matches up your shape. You can always kind of stretch it a little if it's not, but that's pretty good. Alright, so I'm thinking this is as far as some of you will get today, some of you will still be working on smoothing. And you're just going to do the same thing for the inside of this with the loop tool. But again, you kind of want to hold its shape while you scoop so that you don't put a hole in it and so you don't mess up the shape. Okay, so we want this, our lid and our base to be as thin, to be equally as thin. Okay, so they go together. Alright, does that make sense?
Yeah.
All this clay that you scoop out today, if it's like really soft and squishy, you can just put it right back in the clay bin, okay? If it gets crunchy from sitting out while you're working, we're gonna put it in this bucket right on the other side there. It's got a little bit of water in it. That's our slip bucket. So if it's kind of crunchy clay that you would never use again, put it in there, all right? Okay, so get your stuff.